Welcome to the TheDPost for all seasons sports show. I'm sports editor Drew Rubenstein, and with me today is publisher Dave Racy, and a lot of local fans will know Dave from his years of covering sports in and around Morgantown. He was a sports reporter and sports editor for the newspaper, covering the Mountaineers and all of the local high school sports. And in this show, Dave and I, each week, we're going to examine a lot of past events and try to put in perspective certain things that are happening and compare them to past experiences of WVU and high school sports. And the whole purpose of the show is we represent different generations and bringing together how certain things have happened and the old cliche of as things change, they stay the same. And this week, we'll start off with looking at who we would have on our WVU athletic Mount Rushmores. This was I did a column on this in the Dominion Post a couple weeks ago, choosing 4 figures that I thought would go up there. And I know Dave and quite a few readers chimed in with where I was completely wrong with one of my selections. My 4, which I think 2 are slam dunks, are Jerry West, which I think needs no explanation, and Don Nealon, the longtime WVU football coach. My 3rd and 4th selections are where people started chiming in and saying you're a little bit nuts, and that's Pat White, the former WVU quarterback, and the 4th one where I lost just about everybody, I think, was Deshaun Butler from the basketball team. So Dave, let's start there. Where was I on base, and where did I completely get it wrong?
Well, you don't ever get anything completely wrong. I think a case can be made for Deshaun Butler, and a case certainly can be made for Pat White. I think the one that I guess was an omission was Ira Eric Rogers, who played way back in the 20s and stuff. But if you look at his total overall career at WVU, both coaching and playing, I don't think anybody, even Jerry West, could top it. He was, I guess, a tremendous football player. He played basketball, he played baseball also. He had 12 letters. He coached baseball, golf, football. I mean, he at university, he coached those for often 20 years or so. So I think that in reading some reports about him when he played, evidently he was the man back in the day of when he played back in the 1920 or so.
And you don't see that as much anymore, where he dabbled in just about anything and everything. And I know that's almost a shame that you don't see that, where athletes are able to flex their muscles in a variety of places the way that he did, where it seemed like it really, he caught everybody, was a key figure in the sports scene, and it wasn't just one season, he did it all.
Now the specialty is, they're starting in even, grade school or middle school or definitely high school, they start specializing now in things. I think a couple players in university have recently have played 2 sports. Some will play football, baseball. We had one quarterback played basketball one season, Jared Brown.
Right.
But it's a rarity. I think the last guy that was probably, in my memory, was Chuck Halley, the former all-pro linebacker of the Dallas Cowboys. I believe he played football, and I think he was into swimming and some other
track. I think too,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. So he was the last one that I can sort of recall that really, got into the sports like that.
And a couple other figures, I guess, that we would absolutely have to mention as up for consideration. Sam Huff, obviously, on the football side, although when I started looking at this, I tried to focus more on lasting impression at WVU, and not to say that Sam didn't have an unbelievable career at WVU, but I think a lot of what he's remembered for is what he did in the NFL, maybe more so than in WVU.
That's the key, is do you count what they did past WVU or just at WVU? And I agree with you on that. If you count Sam Huff's entire football career, both in the pros, then he might be worthy of that. But if you just count, that his college career, it was outstanding, but was it enough to, put him up on the mountain, so to speak?
And the other one that I wanted to bring up and get your background and see what stories you remember about him is Fred Schaus. Fred came in at the athletic department at a time where they were in the red for quite a few years, and on top of the success he had as a basketball coach, obviously with Jerry West and making a run at the national championship, he later came back and then kind of put WVU on solid athletic standing. Is that right? Do you remember things about Fred and his lasting
it might be who you talk to. I mean, I covered a lot of the minor sports coaches and those sports center coaches, and some of them, Fred was very tough. He was, frugal Fred may have been the word for Fred Schaus. And at the time, it's what West Virginia needed. I think at the time it was the beginning when athletics started to become a financial type situation. They were just hiring a business manager. Now they have whole offices and stuff of accountants and things, and you just know how the money is gone. So he came in on that era, and I think maybe his background in the pros and whatever, but he was able to start us off on that foot. I don't know if it's enough to get you on the mountain, though.
The other ones that we consider up for the mountain are 41 years that Title IX has been in place, and when you look at how far women's sports have grown at WVU, I know there are a lot of pioneers like Kitty Blackmore and others, but I think the one that I would seem to say would be most deserving of a spot up there would probably be Nikki Izzo-Brown. Maybe Linda Burdett Good, but I know Nikki Izzo-Brown wasn't one of the earliest pioneers, but when you look at what she has done with WVU women's soccer, it's become a national brand where the women's soccer team's been to 13 straight NCAA appearances. She was able to get a beautiful practice facility built over near the Coliseum, and I think it's a place where she is attracting a lot of the top level talent, and it's probably the most thriving women's program at WVU right now. But from your perspective and looking back, who would you throw into the conversation?
Linda Burdett Good now, was at like she was the second only coach we had for the longest time, and she did a really good job of bringing in athletes here at WU that, West Virginia doesn't have high school gymnastics. It's all out of private club, and most of those are from the larger cities and stuff. And she brought in quite a few talented performers and made a nice program out of it. So she definitely, I think, over the long stretch of the thing, has done an excellent job there. And, Kitty Blakemore started the women's basketball program, and I think she got that going on the right foot, and we did get in the NCAAs with her still as a coach, and I thought she did an excellent job, and now, Mike Carey's got him back in the winning ways too. So a lot of pioneers, but again, you only have 4 slots up there on the...
Right.
I don't know how they decided the presidents, but that must have been a difficult decision.
It is, and that's a good one, and it's interesting just to see as the women's sports have grown. We had a story last year, and one of the things is just how much the budgets have grown is really what's kind of captured me. I remember going back and looking, I think the first year of a women's basketball program, the budget was a little more than $2,000, to whereas now you're talking about millions upon millions of dollars. And
well, one year I remember West Virginia was playing St. Bonaventure back in the old Atlantic 10, and the men and the women were playing same time.
Okay.
And the men were leaving like 2 days before on a flight from Pittsburgh to Buffalo or whatever to get to St. Bonaventure. The women were leaving the next day on a bus. So, it was not total all equal when it first started, and I think, to the credit of athletic directors and programs, they realized that they do need to keep it on a level keel, and so now the women have the same travel opportunities as the men in basketball and things. They share the same basketball facility, and so it's pretty even there. And, of course, they have no equivalent to football, but I think that the other teams probably travel as well as comparable men's teams.
To kind of close up, though, going back to the Mount Rushmore, it seems like you're in agreement with Jerry West, Don Nehlen. Would you put Pat White? Would you put Major Harris? Or who are your last two on that?
Well, Ira Rodgers, I think, has to go. I think he just has to be on there just based on what I've read about him. And there's a lot of good athletes. The last one's a difficult one. Pat White didn't lead us to the championship game. Major Harris did, but Major Harris's career was pretty short too. So I don't know on that one. I tell you, there might be a fourth one out there that we might be overlooking somewhere. But Pat White is probably as good as an athlete as I've seen, unless you count someone like Greg Jones, the All-American wrestler, who only lost like 2 matches or 3 matches in his entire career and was 3-time national champion. So, but it's a sport that's not followed as heavily as football.
When you do lasting impression, the rifle that's won all the national championships they have,
medals and things.
Right, track where there have been medals and everything, and it is interesting. If you have a recommendation for that 4th spot, let us know. Dave, thanks a lot for joining us on this week's edition of For All Seasons, and please continue to check TheDPost.com for all the latest sports videos, and DominionPost.com and the Dominion Post for all the latest and local sports news. Thanks for joining us.